Okay, so let's spend some time on the sort of how do we get started, the big question of how do we move from our current state to initiating a future state. What is really clear, whether you're drawing on the collective impact, but even if you draw beyond that and go back to community strengthening, community resilience, community development literature, it's pretty consistent that there are a set of preconditions that are required to be able to instigate a cross-sectoral collaborative process that sticks, that actually drives impact. These are the three. You need influential champions. They are absolutely core. They really have two roles. One is to say the current outcomes are unacceptable. That children grow up and have these life outcomes is unacceptable. That women are experiencing this type of conditions is unacceptable. That our environment, whatever it is, but it's really being that herald for change. We cannot accept these outcomes. It's related to the urgency. And the second thing they have to say is, we can't keep working the way we've worked. They don't need to know the answer about what the new way of working is, but they have to strongly call for a new way of working. So to me, organisations that are aligning to the SDGs and have a systemic lens to this could easily take up this role, because organisations are speaking publicly and doing public action all the time. So even just tilling the soil and taking up that influential champion, using your platform, your authority, just to call out the outcomes are not acceptable. We need a different way of working to the way we've always worked, is enough to start building conditions for readiness. You need a little bit of money to get started, but I would say not a lot. Not everyone agrees with that. And we can go a bit later into what does like a startup budget might look like. But we cannot, I think I could say this enough with enough sort of neon lights flashing. You need urgency, because you are countering the status quo. That it is easier to keep doing what we're doing now. So lots of collaborations fail because they can't harness urgency. They're either they're convening about stuff that not enough people care about, or they haven't been able to make the case for change about what they think people should care about. Lots of collaborations have start with a process outcome. We need to work better together. It's never going to cut through. It's not urgent. It needs to be about change, seeing something different in the world to what we see now. It needs an impact, call to action. And so there is a real skill in, we talked about it yesterday, how can you create urgency without anyone getting hurt? And how do you leverage off the existing narrative of whatever that is in your context? It might be a narrative of crisis, it might be an experience of crisis, or it might be that narrative of, in many communities, like, we don't feel like there's this sense of despair and hopelessness. So you've got to build, this narrative of strengths, and things do work here, and we need to build off that, and we need to understand what works and move forward from there. You can almost hear the narrative, and when influential people with power talk about it, including informal power, not just talking about organisational leadership, this is the conditions you're trying to create. Here's a handy checklist created by the people that wrote Collective Impact on the things that you need to have in place before you would initiate. So many collaborations really, if we're honest, they convene too early. They bring people together when there is insufficient. They haven't got the influential champions to sort of carry it, and they haven't got enough urgency to keep people at the table. You need some infrastructure. Champions are part of that. The neutral convener. Now, in the beginning, some neutral conveners are in existing roles, but they're able to take up that, they're trusted enough, or they have the right skill set. Sometimes the collaborations start by bringing a backbone in, and other times they emerge from the process. It'll be dependent on your context. But you need people to understand certain functions need to be played. We looked at some of them yesterday. That's the backbone role, is playing certain functions. So you can play those functions when you're in startup mode without needing to resource them through a new entity. You can actually repurpose existing people with those skills to take up those functions. And I'll leave the rest for you to read through when you get the slides. We have talked about most of them. Oh, I will call out one, which is the role of the funder. It is quite a powerful way to get all those three conditions in place. Champions, enough financial resources and a sense of urgency is if you get the funders connected to the emerging purpose, enough of them aligned. So some initiatives start by funders catalysing them. So that's where funders get together, whether they're government or philanthropic or community-based, and say, we are aligning our funding behind getting change in this part of this thing, or this part of life, or this part of the environment, or this change that's required. We don't know the activities and strategies that will get us there, but we are going to start aligning our funding behind it. So funder-led collaboration, or the funder-catalysed collaborations can have a lot of power. It's how you harness that, because they can't sustain with just funders. So I'm raising it because if you're a funder, there is a powerful role you can play by aligning other funders with you locally to say, let's start something and take this exploratory path together. This is again from the collective impact literature, just because I find it very accessible. Collective impact initiatives unfold in phases. All collaborative change processes unfold in phases. They have provided this helpful schematic that shows right back in the beginning, the work is building readiness, assessing readiness in yourself and in other actors in the system, and building readiness for change. You'll see that developing the common agenda doesn't happen till phase 3, organising for impact. So that means there are 3 phases of work, broadly, phases of work that need to happen before you even get to agenda setting. We spoke to a match of this yesterday about what it takes to build an agenda, but it really speaks to the type of work you're doing early is talking with people, engaging, understanding different perspectives, different people's experience of how the system works now, and trying to move beyond that programmatic language. Oh, everything would be better if we just had this program, to actually getting some systems diagnostics, systems mapping happening, helping people to together learn how does the system operate now, and what could we do to nudge the system to be better. There are readiness assessment tools which I can share, and you can Google them. If you put community readiness into Google, you'll find them. About how can you use some sort of checklists with your partners or with community to say, are we ready for this type of work? But it all sits around dialogue, learning together, mapping the system, and determining, is this something we want to keep doing together? I'm going to spend a couple of slides on this. We've talked about it a bit, but to me this is absolutely that systems change is most effective when you have a paradigm shift. The paradigm shift has to happen in the people that start the work. They have to believe that it takes more than programs. They have to have a systemic lens. They have to move into adaptive practice, which is that experimental test and try approach. They have to completely live and breathe the people that started, because that is against the way we work now. That is a radically different way we work now. If the core catalysers don't believe that and start practicing it, then the collaboration probably won't sustain. Understanding the difference between an adaptive problem and a technical problem, the idea that there is no one solution, and this thing we've been brought in earlier, which is this credibility versus credit, sort of the attribution. I am responsible for this impact versus we are responsible for the impact. I'm going to go into this in a bit more detail, because it's trying to talk to the difference between the mindset required for collaboration and perhaps the status quo. But often institutions or people who hold expert knowledge view benefactors or recipients or community members in a different way that is not helpful for collaborative practice. So the less collaborative mindset says there are certain stakeholders in our system who just won't be able to understand complexity. They're really influenced by others in the system, media, their neighbours. They only care about just the things that affect their life. They're going to push their own personal agenda. They don't really care a lot. They're not educated enough to participate. They're driven by self-interest, and they're too emotional to be involved. Therefore, it's really a risk if we engage them. So the mindset, the people who start this work, who catalyse it, has to challenge those. That is the beliefs, assumptions, values that sit below the waterline that no one ever talks about. This is why the collaborative practice must feel different and exhibit a different set of values. That says people in this system know things we will never ever know. Because I only see one part of the system, I'm only an actor in one part of the system. They are actors in other parts of the system, and we need their knowledge to get a full picture. They're going to provide us with really useful and different knowledge and perspectives to what we hold now. They are a vital source of innovation and creativity. They're very, very good at weighing up different options, and they do so all of the time in the system they live in. They can be trusted to do the right thing, and if we work together, they will help us to make better decisions. Therefore, it is essential that everyone is involved in the collaboration. This stuff is the intangible, but it is so critical to how you start and the ability for the collaboration to make systemic change. Many collaborations are institutional collaborations, and the hypothesis is they never get embedded into the places or the communities that they are seeking to serve. And it's all about building trust, which we've talked about. And I just love that picture. So this is trying to make the mindset change as tangible as we possibly can. You, the catalysing group, and you're trying to grow this. It's like a virus. You're trying to spread it from believing that I just need more money to do more of my program because my program's the best thing, to accepting we're only going to ever achieve large-scale impact if we work collectively, to wanting that, oh, look, let's just cut the talk. We just got to get on with this action and everything will be better. That drive for simple, quick fixes, which I'm saying push into the early wins. From yesterday, we've got to be able to say no. We need to hold spaces to talk about and work on the stuff that requires multiple perspectives, sometimes competing perspectives, conflictual perspectives, and hold those views simultaneous to find the new answers or the new way of working. These narrow views versus all perspectives, the self-interest perspective towards we actually are preferencing the shared agenda to our own agenda. This risk intolerance that we see from the bigger institutions in the system, resistance to change because it's hard versus capacity for change, like we develop a muscle for change. And what we've talked about only this morning is this attribution versus contribution. So trying to really name what it's got to feel like and why the people that catalyse it or the organisations and leaders that catalyse it need to embody this way of working. So this is, I think, the summary slides, the recognition that the situation's complex. What does that involve? We don't know the answers. Most leaders, particularly institutional leaders, find it really hard to get up and say we're initiating a process or we don't know the answers and we're going to embark on exploring that together. They are paid, incentivised and used to coming up and saying here is the answer. So it challenges people personally. The results are unpredictable, the context is changing and we're not all on the same page. You've got to create that understanding of this is our starting point. And then you've got to work on increasing adaptive capability. So people have heard of VUCA. This is a military term. Tolerance for volatility, uncertainty, complexity and ambiguity. Basically being able to sit with discomfort, not knowing that certainty is, you can't deliver certainty to people. That you've got to increase people's authority to intervene. You know, many people are waiting for someone else to lead. Oh, things will get better when someone else does this, or particularly government. We need governments to change before we'll change. Actually, let's authorise ourselves because we can change the system because the system is a set of rules and the way we behave with each other. And an openness to this learn by doing, and something that organisations, particularly bigger institutions, grapple with is a higher risk for a higher tolerance of failure. And the last one is deliberately create a culture of learning, seek out what is emerging, have conversations that value candour. That's what we were trying to model this morning, and invest time and energy, processes and infrastructure in learning. We have diverged intentionally off how to get started into mindset because you cannot start without this mindset.